Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, Debunking Mythology. I have to remind you every time, Sat is a Sanskrit word means truth. Therefore, Bhagavan is called Sat Chit Anand. And Logos means a study or science. So Sattology means the science of truth and study of truth. Even though I invented the term, but the best explanation to me was given by His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj when he heard the term. He laughed for 15 minutes. He said, that's a great term. Opposite of that is mythology. In Sanskrit means a fake lie imagination, and mythology means a study or science of fake lie or imagination. It's an irony that American academic system and generally the Western academic system calls everybody else's ancient history as mythology except theirs. And this is the biggest irony. Like they call entire South American native history as mythology, entire Native American history as mythology, their faith systems. And this is a big irony for us. Like why such a big, I would call it a discrimination against others' faiths, others' cultures. And so when we say Ramayana and Mahabharata have so many proofs, and you can see it all over the world. Every time they dig something, some Vishnu Murti comes out, Ganesh comes out, Shiva comes out all over the world. But they will never recognize it. It will never go into the curriculums. Why? There is a bias. So in the Sattology show that you're watching, we want to be as truthful as we can in all our narrations and all our talks and discussions. And that's why I think all of you are treating us as more credible than before. So today I have a very, very special guest, author of Gita Comes Alive. He's a poet. He has a great sense of humor, and he comes from a warrior tradition from the West. But he's a teacher of the world's ancient Sanatan Dharma culture. It belongs to the whole world. It may have origins in Ganga and Jamuna, but it belongs to Manushya, humanity. So without delay, let us welcome Sri Jeffrey Armstrong.
Namaste, Adi, and everyone else. So good to see you. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma. Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. We always begin by honoring the great beings. Really what they were was freedom fighters. Let's just be clear at the beginning. The term for freedom is moksha.
Yes.
And to fight for the freedom and rights of every living entity is actually yoga. Yes, Adi?
Very beautifully put, very beautifully. Because actually they were the real freedom fighters. All the relative freedom fighters that we find here, they have all fought for their own personal interests. But the great rishis and munis from Bharat, they were the actual freedom fighters because they actually fought for the freedom from karma bandhana, which is the most important fight we have, isn't
Absolutely. It? And so in that fight, there's one thing to remember. Please remember this. It is your individuality. There's one word that Adi saves for special occasions, and today's one of them. Sat Chit Ananda. So we all are Sat, we're permanent. We're Chit, we're conscious. We're Ananda, we're by nature joyful. But there's one more word, and it's Vigraha.
Correct.
Graha is gravity. It's the grave. It's all of these things that are pulling us down and giving us definitions of self that disintegrate. But the yogic teaching begins by saying, never doubt that inside of all of those coverings is an actual you that cannot die and is always an individual.
Very beautifully put. And even though we cannot just levitate. You have to get yogic siddhis to levitate a little bit higher than the earth.
So let's give you a definition for that. To me, because I'm a poet, I'm very I started my journey by seeing beauty and by wanting to understand where it could possibly come from. How could anyone make a world so beautiful? So who made it? Who made the world? I'd like to go meet that person. So there's a symbol of this and of us when we reach our state of awareness, we are indeed warriors like Arjuna and Draupadi in the Gita. But the other one is the lotus, because the lotus rises up out of the mud, stands above the water, and yet is in the water, is in the midst of everything, but now represents that exquisite beauty. And this is what a freedom fighter is, someone who blossoms and is a beautiful lotus, not someone who becomes a hurtful warrior destroying everyone around them, not someone who's selfish and egotistical, but someone who blossoms into the fullness of their true nature.
So the one question comes into the mind is the word known as founders, founding fathers. You know, there is a deep connotation of founding fathers go, because this is a big, like, if I'm the founding father, then you are all nonsense. Would have been a crazy guy, but yes, I'm the founding father. Can we like question the term also, the founding father?
Yeah, where's the founding mother, first of all? I mean, really, this is rude. Founding fathers only, it's an all boys club. Already that's a problem, don't you think? I mean, really, would life be beautiful and elegant and wise and profound and worth living without the presence of the masculine and the feminine? So I'm immediately suspicious when I hear founding fathers and there's no mothers. Wait a minute, something's going on. There's a problem. Right, Adi?
No, the founding father, I find it very hilarious. And you said it very rightly. Where is the founding mother? Because nobody walked on the earth without the mother. So the entire founding father concept is very political in nature. Now, there is a different connotation of Rashtrapati versus the president. President means someone who presides over a meeting or presides over others. And presides means he has a upper hand, or he's one level higher than the rest of the people. But the Mahabharat word is Rashtrapita, Rashtrapati. Rashtrapati means who treats the Rashtra or the land as a father would take care of his own land, or a daughter or a son. So that is a different thing. Anyone who lives in that land is like his dear children. That's another political term being used. And in India also it is misunderstood. So Yudhishthir was called Rashtrapati because he would treat the entire land as his child, and who would care about every part of the land and everyone living in that land. And because he believed in a theory that if the karma is not done correctly as a Raja, as a Prajapati, then the future generations will come to a stop. Now, coming to the future generations, we are slowly moving towards our topic as well. So what is your view on that, today's usage of these terms called president and all these terms which are being used?
You know, Adi, the part that's always bothered me is that it's true that in the masculine body, because it has testosterone at its basis, power is the essential characteristic that it has an overabundance of. But nothing is uglier than a bully, someone who uses power to just randomly dominate others. I was raised in Detroit, Michigan. There were loads of bullies picking fights and dominating, and they were imitating the founding fathers. And yet the feminine is the carrier of life itself and beauty. Now, we're neither the masculine or feminine body, we're the Atma. So let's be clear on that. But each of these bodies is the personification of a part of nature. So the founding fathers is already missing the beauty, ecstasy, compassion, intimacy, and elegance of life. And their asset should be to protect all of those things. But that isn't the feeling we get. We get the feeling that it's an absolute power that's going to dominate you and tell you what to do. And it sounds remarkably like the Yahweh of Christianity to me. As William Blake said, mean old nobodadi. That mean, masculine being in the sky who's using his testosterone to dominate and control everyone. As soon as you don't hear the feminine in the picture and the Atma, our immortal self, being talked of, you're walking into a trap.
So now we are already in a trap of we are being told continuously, you have only one life. All the time we're told one life. That means naturally I'll have hopelessness.
Yeah.
Naturally I will have depression because I have to work very hard to achieve all my desires in one life.
And you're
And
automatically a slave, automatically.
we are a slave of our own mind. So before we start discussion on this, how faulty is this statement? How faulty is this statement of one life syndrome?
Oh, one life only. Nothing could be more depressing, really, than to think that you only have one. It's like one chance. So I think, use the frame that we started with, that there's an angry deity, first of all, and you've done something wrong, but you forget what it is, but the angry deity doesn't. And now you've come here because you were evil for some reason. Does this already sound like a good story? Does this sound like a reasonable story in which you're going to benefit? No. You've been framed. Right there, you've been framed. You should stop right there and say, wait a minute. Tell me what it is I did. What was my original sin? What is sin? What is sin? And who am I really? So you should have stood up in third grade and looked at your teacher and said, wait a minute. Who are we? Are we one lifetime wonders, or are we something deeper, more mysterious, more amazing? If we'd only taken charge of the conversation, we would have objected right away at only having one unfair lifetime with a gun pointing at us from the sky.
This one life syndrome has destroyed. I call it a syndrome. It's a disease, actually. It's a mental disease, because I'm telling you that you can only wear a red shirt every single day for the rest of the life, and that's it. If you do not have the red shirt, that means you do not have an identity. Somebody else should wear only black shirt. Somebody else should wear, but we are human beings. We keep changing our clothes. Every day we wear something else. Today I'm wearing a red. It's not a leather jacket. It just looks like leather, but it is just a. So it's as colorless as that. Like the life will become meaningless if you do not expect something good to happen. A person born in a poor family, and gradually they work hard towards earning money and they become successful. So they have within the same life changed their uh, economic status. It's a new life now. Earlier he was struggling for one time meal. Today he's making a choice whether I should buy a Rolls Royce or any other expensive car, or maybe buy a helicopter. One of my friends was from a very poor family in Maharashtra, where I come from. Both of us grew up in the same village, and today he is one of the richest men in Florida. So within the same life, through his hard work, single-minded dedication, he has changed his lifestyle. So one life syndrome is bad, because if you do not have that potential to grow, or if you do not have the opportunity to grow, or you cannot grow, how depressing is that thought? Is as good as you cannot change your economic status.
Adi, Adolf Hitler, in his famous book Mein Kampf, said a very direct and important thing. He said the secret of demagoguery, the secret of power, is simply making everyone afraid. So you're being made into slaves when the first thing you're told is you're evil, you have only one chance, and you'd better do it my way or else. My way or the highway, Yahweh. When the conversation should begin, you're an immortal being. You've come here on an adventure. You're bold and brave just to do that. You're going to make your way through this existence. So your individuality is the most important asset you have. as you decide what to do next, as you move through this amazing realm that you've decided to come and visit. It's all supposed to be about us on a journey. And this is where our respect from each other then comes from. Namaste means I see you as an amazing being on the same journey that I'm on. Mutual respect. No discussion about whether we should all have that. Vedic culture says you already have that. Namaste.
You used a very important word called mutual respect. Today we are taught we must tolerate. How negative is that word? You know, if somebody tells me you need to tolerate other people, if I were to tell you I'm tolerating you, how disrespectful is that term? Or if anyone tries to tell somebody I'm tolerating you, and now we are taught mutual tolerance, now which is a such a negative word, again coming from one life syndrome, because you have just one life, tolerate others, and just go on with your one life, make your life happen. And another badass, so would you like to comment on this?
Well, first of all, I'd like to add something to it, that there are two, we should all be thinking right now as we hear this conversation, that there also is something very amazing surrounding us. And it's called the realm in which we've appeared. That place appears to be designed intelligently. That is to say, purposefully. So along with being told we're an individual, we should be told that where you're living, this entire realm, is called Prakriti. Prakriti is the place where samsara takes place. What is that? Swimming together across time through matter, which is governed by cause and effect. So you're either going to cooperate with that cause and effect, so anyone, or go against it. So anyone who says they're a leader should explain how we're going to cooperate with the laws of nature. And therefore, we're either being trained to be parasites or symbiotes. You have to ask these questions to find out what is it that we're cooperating with. And this is why the Vedic civilization teaches the rhythm right away, that you're all individuals, we are all individuals, but there are laws of nature. We're going to try to isolate those laws of nature and cooperate, not dominate, cooperate, symbiotic. Or we're going to get as much as we can and suck the life out of everything, parasite. So what does America look like in its early days? Parasite or symbiote? User-friendly, cooperative? Think about it.
You made a very important point, symbiotic, and because that's how all of us grow together. Another important aspect of one life syndrome is ecological damage through over consumerism. Because when you say one life syndrome, then look at the Costco shops, look at the Walmart. Everyone is trying to collect as much possible for themselves. And I don't, we must get all the necessities. It's very important. But at the same time, there is an emergency that, like recently in the COVID-19, this is the first time in the USA we saw shortage of toilet rolls. First time. There's a huge queue for that. It was rationed because everybody thought the world is ending and they should get everything for themselves. And there was a huge stockpile. People were selling in the black market, one roll for $5, one roll for $2. The gloves, the masks, one glove.
Who's selling toilet paper on the black market has to have a name, and I'm not going to say it, but you know what it is. Adi, when the COVID thing began, I saw the first news clip, and it showed just devastated Costco or something, and there was no junk food or toilet paper left. And I said, so this is the problem. Junk food is the problem, and toilet paper is to get rid of the evidence. By the way, my guru said to me, one of the first things I learned from him by coincidence, he said, in India, we use water to clean ourselves. Toilet paper just moves it all around. It doesn't really clean it. So it was the most polite way I've ever heard of him telling everyone in the Western world that they're an asshole. Excuse me, I had to say it.
No, but that's so true. I thought that people will stock up on the grains and they can cook rice or something else. Those things were not touched, but this is what vanished from the shelves actually.
The irony is we're going to destroy the world ultimately by making toilet paper. All the forests will just disappear.
How big the problem is that, one life syndrome and so many trees are getting wiped out, literally wiped out.
Literally. Oh, that was a good one. So you see, there's a term for this again, and it is when your individuality is not based upon this unlimited hunger. So that's called asura. When your response to the riddle of life is to take it all, eat it all, take what you can get, panic, and just become rude and destructive and push everyone out of the way and get yours, then you're being trained to be asura, against the light. If your response is to say, ooh, that's nasty. Wait a minute, slow down, everybody. How much do you need for today? Relax. Let's learn to cooperate. Let's respect each other as all having the same problem. If government's problem solving is going to sound very different than demagoguery.
So another important aspect comes with the one life syndrome is that I should survive. My life is more important than your life. It's a competition now. So the Australians created a law, Flora and Fauna Act, where they made a law considered aborigines as part of trees, the laws for the trees and animals. And Americans initially had made a law that when the railroads were being built and people were coming to the West for the search of gold or uranium, both of them, they made a law that you are given permit to hunt any Indian who attacks. Bison, you said in one of the last talks, bison and Indians. Now, one life syndrome means my life is more important than yours. Isn't that true?
Becomes the dominant principle.
Dominant principle. What do you have to add on this one? Because I know, sure, you have some points here.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's why they got the feminine out of the way, first of all. Because there's no book called Mr. Manners. I just want to point this out. There is a book called Miss Manners, MISS. Miss Manners is a book of etiquette of how to show respect to other beings. There's no Mr. Manners book. So if the male energy goes out of control, it becomes a domineering, exploitive, rapacious energy. And if the female energy goes out of control, there's too many manners and too many rules and everything is more polite, but it's still improved. So honestly, all of the indigenous cultures, and India included, knew that all decision-making should have the male and female voices present at all times. And as soon as you see founding fathers, we're in trouble. And the next thing is that if someone tells you, there used to be a TV show in America called Beat the Clock. It was a great metaphor for being in a human body. Aren't we playing Beat the Clock? So if you only have one lifetime, you get more and more frantic and more frenetic in your relationship to the things around you, and you grab and take and steal. Isn't that called colonialism? Isn't that what they did? The Pope knew what was motivating everyone, and he gave them permission. He said, I'll tell you what, as long as you make everyone Christian, you can go take their stuff. I couldn't say it to you more simply. That was what the papal bull given by the Catholic Church in the early 15th century, before Columbus went out. He wrote a long letter that said, as long as you make them Catholics eventually, you could go take everything they have. So that one motivator, greed, go get it, go take all that they have. They're not really people, they're animals, take whatever they have and then make them worthy of living by making them Christians. This is the despicable plot behind the beat the clock movement called democracy in North America.
Another word which is related to that is gentiles and natives. Now, gentiles and natives. Now, when we say one life syndrome, then the gentiles have no chance because their life is not precious. Natives have no life because their life is not precious. And opposite of that is loka samastu sukhinu bhavantu. And that we, dehino asminatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantar prapti dhiras tatrana muyati. So that means the one life syndrome is destroying dhira, or the dhira means intelligence. Vacho vega, manasa krodha vega. The dhir purush is like who controls his senses. Now, so one life syndrome is attacking that dhira in a human body. There is no word for dhira in English language, so I do not know how to say it. Maybe partly patience, you can say. So it is destroying that virtue in the human body. What do you have to add on that, sir?
Let's add an element to this. Since if we can say honestly that all of us seek beauty and pleasure and want to be in a state of consciousness that's happy and joyful. Clearly, one way to do that is by the objects of the world. But what if that is the problem as well as the solution? It's true, to live here, we have to have a certain amount of material reality. But if we're not thinking in that same moment, is everyone else also getting enough? Then we start creating a worldview that says survival of the fittest. That's what I want you to think. Survival of the fittest, and pushing this idea as a scientific theory via Darwin, making the principle of survival the driving force is a huge problem. So let's say we need another way to say the same thing, another way to frame it. It's been framed wrong. So the frame for the Vedas is what we are is by nature seeking pleasure and bliss and joy and ecstasy. That's Ananda. But the material world doesn't have enough of that to satisfy us. So the Rolling Stones' favorite song, Can't Get No, you know what the answer is, satisfaction. So what if yoga is to find a method of having that satisfaction within? What if there's a method of getting completely satisfied by the state of our consciousness, focusing it in a just so way inside of us, so that our needs externally are now not bearing the full weight of our nature and our desire, then how much we take in the world is diminished. It's an equation. So now our identity is, this isn't out here is not where I get all my pleasure. I learn to get it inside, which is called antaramas, inner joy. There's an equation between inner joy and ecstasy and pleasure and happiness, and being starved externally and then becoming rapacious and just trying to get it in the world. Isn't that what advertising is all about? Trying to drive us toward products so someone can make money. But yoga is to lead us within so that within we have so much joy that we don't become rapacious and greedy out in the world. Adi?
No, you touch a very important point of greed, and one life syndrome actually promotes greed, and it is the lolyam. Sanskrit word is lolyam. Lolyam means covetousness in English, greed, where you want to acquire more than what you want to, or your body needs. So if everyone starts thinking in that way, then this is the actual cause of poverty in other nations. So just like water or air is all. Thank God they cannot control air. Thank God they cannot do that. But it's like if I become rich, it's a supply and demand thing. Somebody else will become poor. So America is rich because of World War II and World War One, and because of the war industry they have maintained. There has been not a single day in last 200 years where America was never at war, and that war is still continuing. And so the one life syndrome in as a national psyche affects badly. It becomes a net exploiter. What do you have to say on that?
Well, we did warn people that I'm a poet. So this is called antarama, or delight within. When the objects of this world are no longer what you crave, you will enter within your inner cave, free at last, no longer a worldly slave. The ropes that bound you once have been cleaved. All anxiety is now relieved. The center of the axis has been achieved. This is the eye of the swirling hurricane, in whose turbulent winds you suffered pain. But in that shelter you will never cry again. No longer driven and wondering what to be. Time has stopped. You, friend infinity. Your friend infinity leads you full toward realms of ecstasy, while the twisting traps that used to be your snare have been removed. No clouds obstruct the air, and the rising moon is always shining there. The senses no longer drag you toward their need. A valiant warrior, you have tamed each racing steed. With clarity of mind, you hold each lead. Now, all the desires that used to flame and burn have been transformed to tools that help you learn. A buddhi now, which means you can discern. While there within, it is day on the darkest night. The sun of wisdom warms you with its light, and beautiful realms thrill you with their delight. We must change the equation of our experience within, truly giving us the satisfaction that no one can get enough of outside.
Very very scientific phenomena. See, the when we talk about Sanatan Dharma as a science, is that it's an experiential knowledge. You can experience it. Anybody who has tried pranayam gets free from mental stress anytime you try it. You do anulom vilom, you get free of sinus. Very simple. All of them have medicinal properties. That's why even the best doctors in the US recommend yoga as a therapy. These are very common now. And American Medical Association has found that yoga is known to decrease stress, and meditation also, which is a purely a phenomenon of the Sanatan Dharma. Rest all other faiths is not like you put your brain in a basket and you go to your church or anywhere else you want to go, and then you over there whatever is being told to you, that's what you should do. It's like I'm telling, it's like very condescending attitude. And with there the same thing comes one life syndrome. And it also comes in the discourses also. Whatever I say is truth, and whatever you feel, you have to change yourself if you feel anything away from my truth, because I am the God's representative, and there is only one way is through me. Again that mindset comes in, which is shown in the corporations, which is shown in the nations, which is shown in the academic circles. I was surprised that in the American academic institutions, if you ask any question other than the topic, you are thrown out of the class or even thrown out of the course also. You cannot do that. So you have to learn what is being said, and you cannot question whether it is right or wrong. Again, the problem of the one life syndrome. One life syndrome means my life is superior than yours. Pretty much that's what they're saying. All the Native Americans, they have no voice till date in the American education system. No voice. Their history is not taught, their languages are not taught, and somehow the individuals are struggling. I know so many of the leaders, they are maintaining the languages on their own. There is no federal support to them, even though American nation has their own president, has their own vice president, and has their own government, but they don't have funds to operate. Only thing they have got is a one police car which is actually spying on them all over the country. So yes, you're
There's
saying.
two parts to this. What Adi said is you just said it greatly, just very succinct. So what's the other part of this? How do you end up in the mousetrap? I just was thinking as we were talking, you know what monosodium glutamate is? It's something that makes you hungry to eat more and more and more and more. It's sort of the chemical greed personified. Now, because everyone was catching on to monosodium glutamate, and because people had to say what they were putting inside of junk foods, they changed the name to natural flavors. Now, because everything exists in nature, they couldn't be faulted for calling these addictive substances that make you greedy and eat more than you need and addicted, greedy, addicted, and taking more of something than you want and eating junk in the process. So it's first of all, it's poison. Second of all, you're being forced to want more and more and more of it. And third of all, it's legal to sell this to our children as food. So this is the result of a culture with no conscience. And worse, a culture that is simply taking everything it can get in the name of this colonialism that started. The Catholic Church unleashed a monster. The monster they unleashed was a worldly greed that justified, that used religion to justify taking everything and controlling others and enslaving them through addiction. This is one of the worst things in Western civilization, which again, you saw immediately, the junk food in the COVID crisis, so-called. But don't you think that eating that junk food all your life will make you sick or susceptible to be sick? So this entire civilization is not civil. It's actually cloaking itself, and it's a greed-based, but it's also an addiction-based civilization. And not giving up those addictions is something people are not taught how to become free of addiction. But once again, if they really saw the secret is being a true individual, and then the secret of your happiness is the status and consciousness of your individuality, then no one would abandon their individuality in these terrible ways.
You put a very, I think you put question in my mouth now. So happiness comes from a very basic phenomena that you first of all, happiness is a right. Is everyone is supposed to be loka samasta sukhinu bhavantu. That's a Vedic aphorism, or that everyone has a right to be happy. But these, now coming to the solution here, now the one life syndrome actually creates distress, stress, narcissistic behavior in you, and mental diseases are directly connected to this mental health. Now, according to the statistics we have in 2017, according to an independent study, 792 million people were suffering from mental disorder. And in the US, the number is 693 people as per 2017 data per 100,000 people, which is the highest in the world. Highest. And the compared to US is, you'll be shocked, Norway, uh, all these South American countries other than Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, excluding these countries, and thus New Zealand. You will think these places are paradise, but the mental diseases are the highest. And the company giving them at the top scale is Iran. And after that, Saudi Arabia. And the happiest countries in the world were Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and I can go all the way Thailand and India, the happiest countries. This is the real data where there are no mental disorders or less. In India, per 100,000 people, the mental disorders are 279, which is one third of the US, one third or less than that. Now, what all these countries believe in? That the life goes on. Atma changes body. Atma body changes, and similarly at the time of death, Atma goes in another body. All these countries who are the happiest believe in the theory that Atma is different from the body. Now, this is the scientific data right there. So on the basis of that, also we know that the Sanatan Dharma, which believes in the eternality of the soul and the predominance of the soul over the mind, body, intelligence, and senses, is a happier philosophy. What do you have to add on that?
Well, first of all, you know that I'm a fanatic on words. So the word happy actually comes from the Old English happenstance, which means by chance. It means lucky. So happy is not the correct word for what we're really looking for. Getting lucky is not what we want. Besides, the root of happiness is penis, and there's no such thing as a permanently happy penis. So you've got to know that we need a better word, and it's ananda.
Prasannatma. Prasannatma.
It's prasadatma. It's the deep inner happiness, and a little bit of that goes a long, long way. That is the secret of what we're sharing. This is the essence of the Vedic culture, is that instead of becoming an addict to the things that are outside of us, which is the way we're controlled by all of these greedy beings, the asuras, but instead we find out where the antaratma, where all of that ananda within is. And we learn how to access that. And this is given out freely by the Vedic culture, whereas everyone else is trying to get your money. The symptom of a guru is that they're giving the unlimited source of sweetness and joy and bliss, ananda, for free. It's right there within you. The great irony is that's the secret. But you have to be a permanent you to become a customer of the permanent ecstasy within.
Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kangshati.
Samasarveshu bhuteshu.
So it's a very, again, this concept doesn't exist. Brahma bhuta. Now Brahma bhuta means consciousness of Brahman, or the all-pervading aspect of Satchid Ananda Vigraha, which is what we're talking about. Now, this is the root cause of happiness, satisfaction, and also not believe in these fake theories of one life syndrome, how it is destroyed. And yes, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if I may, that this is the heart is a lotus. And there's a heart in English is called cardiac, but in Sanskrit it's hridaya. It's the couch or seat on which Hari and Shri, Vishnu and Lakshmi, are sitting, is in our hridaya. So we're supposed to go to the lotus of our heart. And this is why Krishna's feet are called lotus, because that lotus is the most fragrant, most beautiful. It's growing in the mud, but it grows up out of the mud. So that's us. And we're supposed to go into the lotus of our heart for these sacred nectars that you're talking about.
there is another concept was there, like people are all looking for one world government, one life syndrome, one world government, one world government, one life syndrome. Now all these are very exploitative ideas. It was never a Vedic philosophy. Like the if you say the Lokatantra as the Sanskrit word which is used by Bhishma in conversations with Satyavati. Now, that was the real federal government ever that existed, where the local governance was decided at the panchayat level, at the village level. Now, when there is a verse in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Yagatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. I am the well wisher of all, Sarva Bhutanam. Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. One who knows me attains peace. Now, Krishna is talking, not me. Krishna is one who knows Krishna attains peace. Now, that philosophy automatically negates the one world syndrome, which is one life syndrome. So there is somebody else responsible for our internal peace of mind, and that person is residing in our heart. Paramat Upya Utto. So what do you have to add on that? And then
Well, I have to do this. I just can't resist. I have to give them some yoga candy. Sri Ram Narayana Vasudeva Govinda Vaikuntha Makunda Krishna Sri Keshavananta Nashringa Vishnu Mam Trahi Samsara Bhujanga Dashtam. The serpent of rebirth has got me in its coils and is squeezing me. Oh, Sri Ram Narayana Vasudeva Govinda Vaikuntha Makunda Krishna. This is yoga candy, beloveds. This is the secret. If we're the Atma, then this is the candy for the Atma. As a yogi, you will become self-sufficient, Brahmabhuta Prasanatma, when those names are what you feast upon until you're satisfied. And then you come back and look at the world and go, oh, I should do something about all this suffering. I'm fine. That's yoga candy.
the last point, the one life syndrome actually created hippies. And Prabhupada said it very famously, I turned hippies into happies. Very simple. Because they were looking for something beyond, and which the existing one life syndrome philosophies cannot fulfill. So if somebody is looking for the origin of hippies, look at the movement very clearly. These people in the Vietnam War and also many other wars, now all those movements are crushed by the government. And the social media is the biggest silencer. It's like I don't, since everyone wants to communicate via social media apps, which is controlled by some leftist loony somewhere sitting over there. Leftist means ultra left, not even left. Those guys are silencing the free speech. Now, I- so one life syndrome has led to this leftist movement and the rightist movement also. Both are one life syndrome followers. Whereas the followers of dharma are logical, reasonable, and also they can play on both sides. It's an opposing philosophy to both.
And they take the long view.
They take a long view. That's right. So we have effectively debunked one life syndrome. So those of you are asking me questions on that, and so you guys make your own decision after hearing this discussion. And if you like it, then join us on the YouTube as well, and let us know your feedback. Do you want to add something as a closing line, Jeffrey?
I guess that's why they call it a syndrome. Don't fall for it. It's freedom that yogis stand for, ladies and gentlemen. Ultimate freedom. Not the freedom to be greedy, the freedom to be in ecstasy.
In one of the next shows, after we've already talked about the next show, but after the show, we will have a pure Bhakta syndrome also will attack, and we will clarify that matter. So thank you all for watching, and namaste.
Namaste.